Hey guys, James Brown with Barton Springs Mill here. Here is the feeding of your starter video that you've all been asking for already. Earlier this week we put up the initial video that showed how to start your starter. And I posted an update this morning that showed how our starter was doing so far. It's got bubbles, quite a few bubbles, a little dark discoloration on the top, which is perfectly normal. A real fruity, boozy kind of thing going on, which is really attractive. And that's going to change over time as it gets more mature and the collection of organisms that you have in your starter sort of get in balance. That may change a little more yeasty, boozy. I've got two different starters at home. Bonnie, the name of one of my starters, is really pleasant, and Brutus, the other starter, he's just funky and nasty and moody and not all that appetizing to smell, but he makes a great loaf of bread. So depending on what the flora is in your given starter, they're going to be very different from household to household, from person to person. That's totally cool. So I'm going to show you how easy it is to feed these guys. I tried turning the scale around where you can see it in the video. The digital readout doesn't show up so great, so I'm going to forego that. And instead of having to read it in the monitor there, I'm going to do it facing me. Starting next week, we will have a high definition camera and lavalier microphones, so this is going to get better. Just hang in there with us. So the scale's your friend. You can do a whole lot with this. There are a lot of different ways to do this. If I were doing it at home, I would take one of these wet canning jars that's empty, put it on the scale, and pour 100 grams from my existing starter, because remember we put 100 grams of flour and 100 grams of water in here. That's 200 grams. And I want to keep half of this. Since I only have one canning jar with me today because I gave my other one to Abby, I'm simply going to pour out and measure 100 grams into the plastic cup and get rid of it. You don't have to be that exact. I'll be honest, at home what I do is I turn on the kitchen sink and I pour out what looks to be like half. For day-to-day feeding, that's fine. When you get ready to do your builds for making a levain, for making your bread, you want to be more exacting. For feeding, it's way more forgiving than that. You don't have to be that precise. But here goes. I'm going to turn on the scale, and I'm going to get fairly close to 100 grams here. I'm just going to pour it out. That's close enough. I'm going to try not to get it all over the place. And I'm going to discard that. And forgive me for using a plastic cup and for discarding it too. As I said, normally that's not what I do. So I'm going to set this up on the scale. I'm going to tear it out, meaning I'm going to zero it out. And I'm going to pour in 100 grams of water. Perfect. And what I usually do is take my trusty butter knife that I use for doing this, get the rest of this off the side of the jar, and give it a little stir just to get it broken up and to disperse those organisms throughout the water. It makes the next step a little easier, and you don't have pockets of active and inactive stuff. Again, this is not rocket science. Do what works for you. And I'm going to set that up here again on the scale. I'm going to tear it out. And I've got a bucket of flour here. This happens to be Ruby Lead whole wheat. Just came off the mill a few minutes ago. And I'm going to see if I can get this in here without making a mess. Hope I brought enough. Barely. Bam. 101 grams. More than accurate enough. And then I just take my butter knife, give it a good stir. And all you're looking to do is to hydrate this. Some of my colleagues use these fancy OXO spatulas or Rubbermaid thin line spatula. I think they have too much drag. and it wears my forearm out. So I use this butter knife. It's easier. It slides through the starter a little easier. I made this today, a little on the stiff side, but it's totally fine. Again, you know, you just need to get close, and everything's good. So once you've done that, stick the lid on. You can wet your finger and wipe down the sides of the jar a little bit if you want to clean it up. You can put a rubber band on here so that you can gauge the rising and falling of it. And now it should start to rise and fall on a fairly regular basis, and provided the temperature in your house is consistent, it'll rise and fall, start to rise and fall more and more predictably the more mature it gets. So that's all there is to it. It's really simple. Do what works for you. Don't get too hung up on being too precise. And in our next video, we'll start talking about building a levain to make bread. So hope you're all staying safe out there. Stay healthy. Take care.